And if anyone upstairs does need to get my attention, just stomp on the floor. And how's the volume? Is it good for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
What'd you say?
Yeah. And it sounds like my wife back there. She never listens to me either. I do have to give some paperwork here at the gate, so they'll let me out. I hope you've enjoyed your holiday so far. Thank you. Now, hopefully you know that you are on Vancouver Island. This is the largest island on the west coast of both North and South America. There are some 700 Gulf Islands. Some of them are mere tiny rocks. All the way up to this. Whereabouts are you folks mostly from?
Montana.
Canadian?
Montana.
Okay. Well, because I can do the commentary in both miles and kilometers,
Miles.
and since I know I've got some that understand both, I'll give it in both. Vancouver Island is approximately 300 miles long, 500 kilometers. It's 50 to 70 miles wide, 80 to 110 kilometers. It's actually larger than 9 U.S. states. It's also larger than 100 countries in the world. Belgium, where that good chocolate comes from, is the same size as Vancouver Island, and they have 11 million people. We have a mere 750,000, so we are quite fortunate here on the island. Looking off to the right, you can just see in the distance a line of hills. Those are actually mountains, the Olympic Peninsula Mountains. This is the Straits of Juan de Fuca. It's 18 miles, about 27 kilometers across. And the water temperature here is quite cold year-round. 7 to 10 degrees Celsius, 44 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Over the years, about 70 people have tried to swim this distance. Only 6 have ever succeeded, and the very first to do so was a young lady from Ontario, as a matter of fact. A girl by the name of Marilyn Bell. At the age of 18 in 1956, she swam this distance in just under 11 hours, securing for herself a prize of $30,000. She went on to swim such other bodies of water as Lake Ontario and the English Channel. Got a horse-drawn carriage here, so I'll be slowing right down. We'll always go by them cautiously. And this is the side of the road I'm supposed to be driving on anyway. And we're about to go into Beacon Hill Park. Beacon Hill was so named for the beacon fires that they used to light upon the hill in the park to guide sailors into safe harbor during storms. This was, of course, before any of the lighthouses had been built. This was a gift from the Hudson's Bay Company. You'll hear their name quite a bit during this tour. It was a gift to the original citizens of Fort Victoria. It was given in 1850. Let's interrupt myself a bit. On the left-hand side is mile 0. I'm not allowed to stop here, but I'll slow right down so you can look at it and maybe take a picture. That is the start of the Trans-Canada Highway. It is the longest highway in the world, point to point. It goes from here in Victoria, British Columbia to St. John's, Newfoundland. It is some 5,000 miles long, 8,000 kilometers. And if you're in St. John's, Newfoundland, you're actually closer to Europe than you are to us. The Atlantic Ocean is only 3,000 miles wide, or 5,000 kilometers. Now, as I was saying, there were some conditions with the park. If you look on the left, you can see the flagpole on top of Beacon Hill. And coming up it will be on the right-hand side as I turn into the park, is the world's tallest freestanding totem pole carved from a single tree trunk. It is 38.8 meters or 127 feet 7 inches tall. It was carved by Chief Mungo Martin and his son David in 1955. It is a pictorial representation of the history of Vancouver Island. I'll pull over so you can get a few pictures of it. It was commissioned by the city of Victoria, but it was actually paid for by donations by private citizens. Here it is there. And each of the animals on the totem pole signifies a different era of the Native Indians on Vancouver Island. There's been indigenous people living in the area for about 4,000 years. As a matter of fact, the Straits of Juan de Fuca, Puget Sound, part of Straits of Georgia, and Harrow Straits have all been renamed last year by the Canadian and American Oceanographic Societies. And the new name for the overall area is the Salish Sea, in honor of those First Nations people. If I can get people to retake their seats, we'll get underway. Now, I mentioned that the park was a gift. There were some conditions with the gift. The first was that the park be open and free to everyone, no matter who they were or what race they were. Also, that there be no fence built around the park, so people could come and go as they pleased. And lastly, that there be no economic activity conducted within the confines of the park. And that's true to this day. There is no tea garden, no ice cream parlor, no paid parking. There is a petting zoo for the children, but it's by donation only. They get a small grant from the city for the few paid positions. Everything else is volunteer. And it is a great hit with the children. They have baby pigs, piglets, sheep and lambs, billy goats and kids. So you have kids chasing kids. We also have quite a few peacocks. You might be able to see a few. They should still be strutting around. Well, there's one on the fence right over there. 2, 3, 4, and a duck right here in the foreground.
One looked like he'd skate.
Again, I have no traffic behind me, so I can't stop for a moment. And the peacocks are completely fearless. I've had them walk right in front of the bus and stop, expecting me to feed them. I'll get underway again. Coming up on the right is a sequoia, or giant redwood, native of California and Oregon. They thrive in this climate. This particular one's only about 120 years old, but you can see by the lower branches how much the children climb upon it to get their picture taken. And here we have a peahen right in front of the bus. Actually, it looks like it might walk in front of me. Or It's on the right-hand side.
This is 20-year-old.
Also coming up on the right-hand side is a couple of palm trees. Everyone thinks I'm joking when I say there's more than 3,000 growing here in Victoria, but it is true. They're not native to the island, but they do thrive quite nicely. There they are there. Also coming up on the right is the world's largest watering can. Oh, by the way, those folks upstairs, if you start getting a bit warm, the windows do slide open. I'll remind you of that now. This watering can used to be a wading pool for the children, but it was quite stagnant water, and there was fear that it could breed disease. So it was replaced by this can, and the can is actually controlled by the children by pushing the buttons on the far wall there, the red and blue, yellow buttons. And each of the buttons has a different spray coming out of the watering can. But the designers booby-trapped them. Every 7th or 8th time that you push the button, instead of water coming out of the can, it actually sprays out of the button. Soaks the child instantly. And that's the usual reaction. It's a great hit during the summer when the temperatures do finally rise. We have had a very wet spring this year. At the base of this hill where these other buses are slowing down, I too will slow down. On the right-hand side is Goodacre Lake. We're not allowed to stop. But at the end of the lake is a beautiful stone bridge. And at the near end, there's a log tethered in place. Quite often there's wildlife sitting upon the log. Now a couple of ducks. One duck on the log, it looks like. As I go down the hill, you can see on the right-hand side, it's a school zone sign. School is pretty much out for the year, but this sign is still in effect. This is also a playground. 7 days a week, dawn till dusk. But the school itself is coming up on the left-hand side. It is South Park School. It's the oldest school in Victoria, still in use on the original site. Finished in 1895. It's primary, it's grade 1, 2, and 3. And ahead of us on the right, partially hidden by the tree right now, but you will get a good look at it as I go by, is one of the very few billboards you'll find in Victoria. And this particular one is the unofficial motto of all Victorians. Night is for sleeping, day is for resting. On the left-hand side is Thunderbird Park, a vast array of native totem poles from all the different Indian bands on Vancouver Island. They were gathered together by the Royal BC Museum and stored inside. When they went to put them out, they discovered they'd all dried out and started to deteriorate. So they were all reproduced, again by Chief Mungo Martin along with a couple of other master carvers. The originals were placed back in safe storage, so the ones that you see are true totem poles carved by a master carver. They're just the copies. The Royal BC Museum does have an IMAX theater attached, which is a Canadian invention. On the right-hand side is the Empress Hotel. We'll get another look at it from across the harbor. The Empress Hotel was finished in 1908, and it's actually named for Queen Victoria. Victoria itself is named for her, but so is the Empress Hotel. Queen Victoria was originally not just the Queen of England, but she was the Empress of India. Empress Hotel prides itself on its gardens along with most other businesses here in Victoria. A few years ago they put in their own honeybees. Last year they managed to produce 3,000 pounds of honey. I'll just point out the ferry's just leaving right now. We will get another look at it hopefully. That's the Coho Ferry. The Empress's newest addition is right here on the corner where all these people have gathered. It's a mother killer whale and her calf, known as orcas, rendered in plant. True colors would be a very vivid black and white. The closest they could get was green and red. And we're just proceeding into Old Town Victoria. Victoria was founded in 1843 by Sir James Douglas on behalf of the Hudson's Bay Company, along with Dominion of Canada. At that time, the Dominion was in negotiations with the United States of America over the border between our two countries. Again, I'll interrupt myself to point out Darth Vader on the left. After the Star Wars saga, he had to take a job playing fiddle here in Victoria. And he's quite good. Now, as I was saying, we were in negotiations and Canada had claimed Vancouver Island. And it was felt that if we had a strong colony on the island that our claim would be upheld. And it was. Even though here in Victoria we're 70 miles or 100 kilometers south of the nominal 49th parallel border, all of Vancouver Island is Canadian. The Hudson's Bay Company was instrumental in the opening up of most of Canada, best known for their fur trade. They also had trading posts and other economic endeavors. Their flagship store here in Victoria is coming up on the right. It's just called the Bay now. And the Hudson's Bay Company was formed in 1670, making it one of the oldest incorporated companies in the world, 342 years old now. And it's actually no longer Canadian. It was purchased a few years ago by the Lord and Taylor Group in the United States, but they still have a very strong presence in Canada. The original Fort Victoria was 330 feet by 330 feet. Sad to say, it burned to the ground. The last remnant of it is a single steel ring from where they used to tie the ships up at Quayside. That can be found in our Maritime Museum at the foot of Bastion Square. Bastion Square is also where Judge Begbie presided, and he was known as the hanging judge. He was not in favor of the death penalty, but if the crime demanded it, he would gladly try you in the morning and hang you in the afternoon. The original population of Fort Victoria was only 1,500 people, but once gold was discovered in the Fraser Valley and the Klondike, Victoria became the jumping off spot for all the gold miners heading up inland. The population ballooned from 1,500 to 20,000 in a matter of 6 months, and frontier justice was required. If you look across the intersection on the left-hand side, you can see a brick building. At the top of the building is the date 1891 and the Humphreys, the name of the building. A lot of the heritage buildings in Victoria do have the dates on them. We have a very strong Preservation Heritage Society, and there is grant money available for those wishing to upgrade the interior of the building. They can apply for the money, and the only stipulation is that exterior remain true to its original design and construction. Another heritage building is coming up on the right. This is the McPherson Playhouse. While it looks quite modern, it was actually built in 1914. It seats 750 people, and it's been in continuous use by local organizations putting on all sorts of plays and stage productions. And we are looking at the left-hand side at the corner of Chinatown. I will drive through downtown Chinatown later on in the tour. And you can see that they have red street signs with both Chinese and Canadian English characters on it. Next building I'll point out is called the Swans Hotel. This is a brew pub. It used to be a feed store and granary. Railway tracks went right inside this building. After the city expanded and farmers moved further and further out, the building fell into disuse and disrepair. The current owner purchased it, spent many hundreds of thousands of dollars turning it into a 29-room boutique hotel, fine dining, brew pub, nightly entertainment. And if you look across the street, you can see a dilapidated brick building. That's about what he started with. So he felt, just like the Hans Christian Andersen story, The Ugly Duckling, he turned an ugly building into a beautiful swan, and that's where he got the name from. You can also see that railway tracks are completely gone, even from across the bridge. This is the Johnson Street Bridge. It is a bascule type bridge. It uses the large concrete counterweight to open and close it. And unfortunately it has reached its lifespan. It is slated for demolition next year after the new bridge is constructed on the right. And it is a shame. It's an iconic bridge made by famous bridge makers, Strauss and Company. And you may not recognize their name, but you should recognize some of their other bridges, namely the Lionsgate Bridge in Vancouver, British Columbia, as well as the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, California. As I pass under the overpass here, directly ahead and on the right, is again one of the rare billboards. This one's for Dockside Green, now sold out. The building's not finished yet. It will be one of the greenest buildings in the world when it's done. But that's not the reason that it's sold out. Vancouver Island is the retirement destination for all of Canada. A small city north of us called Parksville, last week it was announced that over 50% of their population is now retired. Victoria is not quite that bad, but it still is 34%. 1 out of 3 people is a retiree. Because of this, our housing market has stayed strong, prices quite stable. We didn't experience any real downturn in the recent economic problems around the world. And all the retirees come here for basically the same reason, our weather. Today is a bit of a dreary day, but it still is good enough that you can partake in outdoor activities. Coming up on the right is a small inner city park. It's got a basketball court, baseball diamond, playground for children, skateboard park for the middle-aged set. And for our more elderly residents, right beside it is a lawn bowling pitch. I'm not allowed to join yet. Apparently you have to be 65. There it is on the right. Now the next building I'm going to actually stop beside for a few minutes is another brew pub. Victoria is second only to San Francisco in the number of restaurants per person within the city. And a vast majority of these are brew pubs. We do like our beer. But Spinnaker's Pub, they also boast that 95% of the food they sell in their pub is produced locally here on Vancouver Island. And here it is on the right-hand side. I will shut the bus off for just a minute here. across the harbor on the right-hand side, you can see the two cruise ships. I know your folks are from one of them. And right in front of the cruise ships, you can see a gray building with an airport control tower on top of it. And that is for the Inner Harbor, or James Bay. It is actually an international airport. We have more than 100 seaplane flights a day leaving both Canada and the United States. We have two ferries. The one's just leaving there. That's the Coho to Port Angeles. We also have the Clipper to downtown Victoria. Cruise ships, of course. The Canadian Coast Guard ties up there as well. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. We have whale watching boats, pleasure craft, heli-jet to Vancouver, tugboats. All of this activity means that we do require the services of that control tower. Everyone's got a picture of your cruise ship. I'll get underway again. I do have to back up a bit here, so please be aware of that.
I can read that. But
We are in the Songhees district now. The Songhees were the original Indian band living in the Inner Harbor when Sir James Douglas picked it as the site of Fort Victoria. Of course, they'd already picked the very best site to live. But he asked them to move and paid them in Hudson's Bay blankets to do so. These blankets were of such fine quality they gladly did so. And he also paid them one blanket for every 40 logs they brought down to help build the fort originally. As the city expanded, it was soon realized that this side of the harbor would also be needed. And they were asked to move once again further out 5 miles or so into Esquimalt. And for this move, they were paid an additional 340 Hudson's Bay blankets, which may not sound like much today, but in actual fact made them the richest Indian band on Vancouver Island and gave them great economic trading powers with all the other Indians. Let's point out on the left-hand side we have shutters, beautiful curved design to the building. And if you look on the right between the next two buildings, you'll be able to see a pyramid-shaped condominium complex. There it is across the water, the greenish building. And here the second phase of shutters is a matching curve. While these are all aesthetically pleasing, they were also done for another reason, and that is to mitigate what is called the wind tunnel effect. Because we are on an island, we do have onshore breezes, and by picking the right design for the right location, it cuts down on the wind felt at ground level. A lot of major cities have high winds on the streets. Victoria has avoided this by encouraging the proper building. Now again, I'm going to pull over and stop, and anyone who wishes to hop off can do so. Hop up on the rocks there and get a few pictures. We'll be here for about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, maybe even 5. I will blow the horn before I leave. And I'm going to count you as you get off to make sure that I don't miss anyone.
Bring it back. There you go.